All right, everybody, thank you and welcome to coming to our afternoon stakeholder session for Lincoln City International Dark Skies nomination. I'm Stephanie Hull with Explore Lincoln City. Appreciate everybody taking the time today. So our meeting objectives, we're going to inform businesses about the merits of dark sky stewardship via responsible lighting and why city officials have decided to consider pursuing International Dark Sky Certification nomination. From here on out, I'll call it IDSC. Otherwise, I'll be here all day with you guys. So we want to learn about the eligibility requirements for IDSC recognition from Dark Sky International, learn about the future role and rewards of businesses in the nomination endeavor, and obtain feedback on the city's pursuit from stakeholders. So our project contact, our main contact is our director at Explore Lincoln City, Cooper Findling. If you have any other questions, you can always feel free to reach out to myself as well. And our consultant is Nilson. She'll be speaking today about dark skies. And please provide your name and affiliation and email address either in the room, or if you could put it in the chat if you are here via Zoom, that would be amazing. And then we also want to know if you are interested in potentially being a volunteer or getting on a mailing list. I don't know if you know this, I didn't know this until recently, that Oregon actually has 7 dark sky certified places, but there's none on the Oregon coast. So could we be the next dark sky certified location in Lincoln City? We're really well positioned to be into that place comparative to other cities like Astoria, Coos Bay, Seaside, similar sizes. And in 2024, our city council directed staff to investigate reducing light pollutions on beaches, and our city manager asked staff to investigate dark sky certification, which is why I'm standing here in front of you guys or at your office and homes today. Stewardship efforts align with Lincoln City's location in the UNESCO Cascade Head Biosphere region as the only biosphere region here in Oregon. Lincoln City has a significant dark skies community and civic support and momentum. Dark skies drive tourism, and tourism is Lincoln City's #1 economic driver. And with that, I'm going to introduce you to Dawn Nilson, and she is going to talk to us today about dark skies. Thank you.
Yeah, so I just have a photograph here on the left of a painting from the late 1800s. And this is Boston Commons. And if you see the people in their Victorian dress and they're out on the promenade, they're out at night, in the evening. You can see in the painting the sun is setting below, and you can see over here the old historic street lights that were mostly gas, right? So they had an amber flame and they were shielded from the top because there was a fire inside. So people were out and about at night with just minimal lighting, and they were still out on the promenade. This is Boston Commons today, because for some reason, somehow, we've come to this place where we think we need tons of light, an excessive amount of light to be safe at night, to be able to walk the streets, drive the streets, bicycle the streets, safe in our homes, etc. What we have now is we have light pollution. A recent study revealed that light pollution is increasing 10% a year. And to put that in perspective, if you have a child born today that looks out in an urbanized area and sees 250 stars, by the age of 18, that will turn into 100 stars. So it's pretty significant what's dropping. And that's just our sight of the stars. And I'm going to go into that this dark sky stewardship is more than just seeing stars, which in themselves could be enough for anybody who's ever been under a bowl of stars. You know how beautiful and inspiring it is. The thing is with all that increase in light pollution, none of this is increasing our quality of life, unless you're in a place that's never been electrified and now you have some electricity at night and some light. But for the most part, where we keep adding to it and brighter and more, because it's interesting, because it's cheaper. It's like, so instead of when we had 1 television, they made them cheaper. So now we have 5, right? We're spending just the same amount. It's the same thing with lights. We're really not conserving with the energy efficient lights, because with the energy efficient just means people go out and buy more lights, leave them on more often, and have them brighter, which takes more wattage. So we're really not saving money because we're just using more. This is a pretty revealing image of Lincoln City. And what this is satellite data that's collected over the years, over a period since like 2012. And it has put it together, and year by year it takes imagery of the radiance of the light that's being seen from the surface of Earth. So that means any light that's not shielded that's going directly up, or any light that could even be shielded, but it's bouncing off the ground, it's reflected from rain, it's just reflected from specific surfaces, or even if a light's in a globe, if it's in glass, it's going to reflect outward, even if fully shielded. And so this shows you right here in Lincoln City that for the most part, the city is, the trend means it's going up. So if you see these areas right in here, this little loop here and this area in here, this isn't an improvement, nor is it trending towards a more polluted stage. It's just staying still. But if you look at green, so if you look at the shoreline, you can see for the most part, the shoreline, there's improvement. And then you can see maybe brighter lights on boats, maybe more fishing boats out there, out in the ocean itself, where you see some increases. But what's interesting is where you see some of these hot spots where it's the reddest, and this means if world average is 10% a year, we're showing that in Lincoln City now, there are areas that are over that average of 10% a year, as much as up towards 20% a year going up. And these areas are mostly in undeveloped sections of the city. So these are in the forest and in the wetlands. There are no sources of light there. That means that all the light from other parts of the city that's going up into that sky glow is worsening the conditions under those super, super dark skies where there is no light. So this is something that the great thing about this particular type of pollution, light pollution versus air and water and the other things that are harder to get at, is that the remedy is so simple to not only prevent this from getting worse, but to turn it back. And here's the remedy. So there's just these are called the 5 responsible lighting principles, and people can follow these simple principles and not necessarily in this order. And that's all it takes to be a steward of the night. And I'll go into later why it's important to be a steward of the night. There's so many reasons. So the number one is only light where it's needed. Is it useful? So any kind of glamour lighting, see my house, isn't it beautiful? See all the beautiful paint that I did on my new building. If it's decorative lighting, that's really not useful in terms of why do we have light? We have light to be able to do tasks at night that we wouldn't be otherwise able to do, or we have it for safety, for wayfinding, to find our way around so we don't trip over a curb. If it's not useful, don't install a light. Or if you see that you have a light and it's really not providing any true use, then decommission it. Just remove it. The next one on the list here is target it. Again, not in priority order. I would say the next priority would be put it on a timer. Control it. So if you have a light because you deemed it useful, you deemed it useful for your guests to arrive at the hotel, and they're going to enter into their room, and they might want to step out into the deck, and you don't want them tripping, you don't want that liability, right? So you have a light. Fine. That's for safety. But that light doesn't need to be on all night long when there are no guests using it. It could just be on a motion sensor. So when the person does step out onto the deck, or to their patio, boom, the light goes on. They're safe. It's on just for the amount of time that there are people there, and then it goes off again. Low level, so only use as much light as is necessary for the task at hand. It doesn't take much light for us to be able to wayfind and to be safe at night. We are designed. We don't have the eyes of a jaguar, but we have pretty good night vision. I mean, we have rods and cones. Our cones help us to see color, and our rods help us see contrast. So we really genuinely can see pretty well at night. So if I want to look out of my hotel room and I want to see the ocean, I can see the ocean because there's enough light from the stars or from the moon or from the clouds that are in the sky collecting what bit of light there is all around that are reflecting, that I can look out the window and see the ocean waves. But if the outside is all illuminated, then I can't see that ocean that I've come to visit because I'm only looking at what the spotlights have been put on, because my eyes, it's about the way our eyes work. So the lowest level is really the best. And when they do demonstrations, like if a community is going to retrofit their street lighting and they do a demonstration and they'll do bright white lights and they'll do warm, dimmer amber lights, the majority of people always go for the dimmer and warmer. And if anybody's ever been to Europe and you think, oh, this is so great, this is so cozy, this is so quaint, um, they don't have the big bright lights. They do. It's what you like, that quaintness, that warmth is that amber and the dimmer. So it's not a question of safety if you go warm. It's not a question of safety if you go lower, but it does make a difference in the sky. It does make a difference in the number of stars, and it does make a difference in human health and safety and ecosystem health. That last one here is warm colored. Well, the controlled is you can put it on a timer. You know, most of Europe now, most of Western Europe, their towns are all on curfews. So, and most of their lights are all smart lighting. They're set so, you know, most people aren't driving around or walking around after 10, and so the lights are dimmed down. Or then they're designed to then go fully off at like 11 or midnight. And then, but if somebody walks by or a car drives by, the light can click on. So they're both on dimmers and on motion sensors. So everything is controlled, and it's controlled from a remote location. All can be done because we have the technology now to make everything just from, you know, you can walk over there on the computer and you can control the lights of a town that way. Most people can do that in their homes now through apps on their with a lot of lighting. So making it controlled is important. Then the last one is warm colored, and folks might have heard about, you know, put night mode on your computers and your phones and your devices, because this blue lights a spectrum of a lot of different colors, and the more blue you have in it, that triggers your hormonal system, so the melatonin in your body. And so when the sky is blue because that part of the spectrum scatters, and so we have a blue sky. But at night we don't have that naturally. We just have the moon and the stars and then some fire. We don't have that naturally. So as we all evolved with a day and a night, we didn't, you know, those of us who are diurnal, we did not, you know, this blue at night is disruptive. So when our eyes pick up the blue, and we could even take out all the cones and rods, we have these special cells in our eyes, ganglion cells, they can detect blue. So you could have a technically blind person who can still see that there is blue light in that blue spectrum. And that will tell your body, shut down. It's time to sleep, rest, turn off, you know, slow down your digestive system so you're not getting up in the middle of the night, right? Then the blue comes back as the light comes in, and then that tells our bodies it's time to wake up and everything starts working again. So when you have all that blue light, that screws up your circadian rhythms. We're all in a rhythm. And it's not just us. It's just about every creature that they do a study on, you know, from bees, moths, amphibians, albatross, sea turtles, just about every creature that they have detected, especially who've developed the complex eyes, are screwed up with the blue light at night. So a few benefits, you know, we have the cultural benefits, we have economic benefits, environmental benefits, health and safety, but we're all human beings and we all care about the same thing. And that's, you know, we all have this cultural heritage. We have this cultural heritage of this sky or the heavens that we call them in all the religions, right? All these mysteries that are up there, this big void that has been the source of curiosity and inspiration. And I know no one in all the years that I've done outreach work or, you know, done star parties, I know no one who has ever said, stars, that sucks. That's the worst thing I've ever seen. People just have an innate connection to it. And I think we actually keep lighting up the cities because once the cities got so bright that we stopped looking up to see stars because we didn't expect to see more, we've just replaced it with other twinkly things because I think we're just hot wired to enjoy that twinkly above us. And so for in so many ways, the night sky has offered us this experience of and a way to understand the world. And we understand it through both mythos, through the old stories, through the old tales, and religion is considered a mythos. And we've got Greek stories and indigenous stories of peoples from around the world, all have stories that of a being in creation that all comes from the sky. And then we also have art. I mean, here's Starry Night. Here's Starry Night on my socks. We wouldn't have Starry Night, one of the most popular paintings, right? But we wouldn't have a Starry Night if Van Gogh wasn't inspired. And Van Gogh said, "For my part, I know nothing with certainty, but the sight of the stars makes me dream." And he painted a lot of scenes at night. And I actually saw this scene. I was staying in San Remi where he painted this when he was at the asylum. And this bright light woke me up, came through that big French window, woke me up, and I'm like, what is that? And it was just this bright light, and it was Venus in the sky. And that's what he saw. And so Van Gogh ran out with his paints and he ran out and he painted that sky. And so, it woke him up because the morning star. So this was really early, just before full dawn, that he painted this. And so, what more can I say? It's also a gateway to science. So, we had astrologers who were following what was going on, and that became then the science of astronomy. And then from astronomy, we figured out physics, what makes, what are these stars comprised of? And then we got chemistry and we got biology. So if you want to engage the kid in science, start them with astronomy because that's really the gateway to science because everybody's intrigued by what's up there. Whoops. Economic benefits, they're huge. We can start with when we have well-designed and responsible outdoor lighting, you save energy and money. But again, that doesn't mean if you have one light bulb that used X amount of energy and then you replace it with this energy efficient light and you only turn it on when it is, oh, you'll save money. But now because it's cheaper, don't go put 10 in, right? Because you won't save if you put 10 in. But if you do tit for tat based on what you need in the amount that you need it in, when you need it, you will absolutely save money. And if you've already invested in lights, if you've already invested in the new lights that are deemed energy efficient, and they are, um, if you replace them, you'd still have a return on investment. So people who are looking to change lights now from old lights because you just can't get your incandescent bulb replacement, you can't buy another halogen light because they're all becoming obsolete because LED is here to stay. It's a smart technology. It doesn't use up heat, so that's why it's energy efficient. It doesn't give off heat when it's producing the light. And if you have to replace that, be smart about it. And that investment that you make normally has a return on your investment within 2 years. So the money that you save energy wise will pay back. Even if you're not looking to be a good steward, even if you're not interested in what the city is pursuing, you'll save money. You'll also make money because it is now in the record that this dark sky tourism, astrotourism, and this month's cover on Nat Geo, on National Geographic, is noctourism. So they're finding, and anybody in the field of tourism has seen in the last years, all the surveys that are coming out, people are looking for interesting experiences. That's what people are doing for their vacations now. They're looking for some interesting, unique experiences. And so going out in the dark with a guide, listening to all the frogs at the wetlands here at the lake, going out on a night paddle, these kinds of things are creating a sustainable ecotourism with this nocturnal creatures and then our stars. This is Lonely Planet for anybody who's ever traveled. I'm a Lonely Planet traveler. That's the book I always go to. And they have a whole book on places to go for dark skies. So this came out just a couple years ago, and I've actually met with this author. So there's proof in the pudding. When we started, there were just a handful about 30 years ago when the certification program started. And each year has almost been a doubling. And so now it's well over, I think last count was like 237 certified dark sky places. It's not easy. It's a very rigorous endeavor, and I'll show you what's entailed. But the fact that there's so many, and in each year there might be one or two that were named, and now we can get like 12 to 15 in a year. It's just crazy how many, and it's all because everybody's learned that, hey, this is a way to grow a local economy sustainably too. Because Travel Oregon did a study and discovered not only is it does it boost a local economy, because if you're going to bring people for nighttime activities, they're going to want a place to stay, and then they're going to have breakfast, and then they're going to maybe go to the grocery store or to restaurants, right? So once you've captured an overnight experience, you have people spending on activities and meals and gas, etc. And so when you talk about Lincoln City and its suitability, not only is there this broad horizon of ocean out there, which creates a great space to look at. I mean, I'm in Oregon for 30 years now, and I used to come to the coast. I came for the coast when Hail Bob was out there because it was the greatest place to see it. And now I don't really bother just because all the hotels are lit up. And I want to see the ocean, and I want to see that bowl of stars over the ocean. And I want to see that bioluminescence in the water, because that's a rare thing that we have every few years. We get all those dinoflagellates, and they're all luminescing. I mean, talk about going after a cool experience. You can stay at a hotel almost anywhere, right? You can sit out on a dock with lights. But how many people can go to a place and look out their window or step outside and see all those lights, natural living creatures lit on the ocean? But you can only do that if the lights are dimmed or out. As I said, there's a host of forest. There are so many open spaces, wetlands, forests, streams, hilltops, a large lake, an ocean front. I mean, it's a UNESCO site, so Lincoln City has it in spades in terms of not just a astrotourism because of the ocean and some other open areas, but the noctourism too. So you don't have to rely on it being clear, like out in the deserts where most people think of astrotourism, right? Because you have a clear night, because they don't have wetlands. They don't have all those magical sounds of the night that people venture off to the Amazon basin to hear. You can hear it as soon as you go into an undeveloped place that is rich and abundant here in the city. So I saw this poster one day, and I don't know who to attribute it to, but I definitely can tell it's fuzzy. I definitely screenshot it and kept it, because come to the dark sky, we have stars, and this is what's happening in communities. So not just communities that are looking to get certified as a dark sky place, but a lot of communities are promoting, either their own dark skies or their close proximity to a dark sky, and say, come here, we have stars. And it's working. So what are some of the ways that it boosts the local economy? Well, winter nights are longer, right? We're up in the Northwest. We have very, very long winter nights, right? Too long sometimes, right? We have too long of winter nights. But that's what stretches the season. And we all know it's hard to keep a secret, but we all know that January and February at the coast can be absolutely amazing. A lot of people who've lived in the valley in the Willamette Valley know that for a while. Hey, you want to not have marine clouds till 1 o'clock in the afternoon? You want to have really nice, sunny, mild weather that's warmer where you are? Go to the coast in January and February. And you also have long nights. So you can give people things to do with those long nights. It's not so cold at the coast where you can't go out and do a paddle. It's not so cold where you can't take a group of folks, and we all, we don't melt in the rain. If it's a rainy night, the activity's not shot. If you get creative and think about nocturnal creature tours, night paddles, evening boat trips. I've paddled on bioluminescent bays. I've paddled in Humboldt Bay, at night on a tide and a full moon. So you don't have to talk about when the stars are out. You can talk about when the moon is out. Because any kind of celestial celebration, if you get people out at night, you have extended your daytime activities in the night. So if any of you are guides on the call or in the room, and you've been doing some tours or some adventure tours, taking people out in the vans to different sites during the day, you can just extend that into the night. If you only do it in the summer, now you can extend it into the winter. People, you can get imaginative of all the things you can do. I always say the sky's the limit when it comes to what you can do in terms of tourism. Oh, I forgot this one too. And it's happened in the Outback. I helped get that certification done. That was a project I had in my head for the last 6 years. And I started communicating to others and it built momentum and we got it done. We got it, the world's largest sanctuary. And, and that's because the town of Lakeview itself in Lake County started doing things like cosmic cocktails and and cosmic coffee and just kind of promoting things like that. And the local outfitter was one of the most robust volunteers that we had because now he could be selling binoculars and small telescopes and books on dark skies and books on astronomy or books on nocturnal creatures, guides on that. Could be putting together little kits that people could borrow so that they had their own. They didn't have to get off of a plane and go to some place and then have to bring all that, like where you could sign it out, like, you used to be able to rent things from REI. Well, outfitters could rent this kinds of equipment to people looking for an adventure, but who don't want to be dragging that along. And especially now with airline travel so crazy, you're lucky if you can carry a dime in your pocket and not get charged for it. So, these are the different kinds of ways that local businesses can um, bump up the economy. Health and safety is really one of the big reasons why many people have lights, and it's one of the reasons why people aren't always ready to change it. But I'm here to tell you, I've been doing this for 16 years, and I've been working with, I participate in meetings all across the globe, several a month, and all the leading scientists and who are doing studies on criminology and the effects of, like, studies in Chicago, studies in Australia, all these studies on health and safety. And most of the things that we think are keeping us safer are a myth. And most of the way that we're lighting, because we have a perception that this is what's going to be helpful or safer, is often the opposite. And a simple example here is here's a shot from a neighborhood in London. So you see the lights, and we all know these lights. And actually, when you have a lot of light pollution, do you see the clouds? The clouds really light up. So interestingly enough, if you're in a cloudy community, which was, let's face it, coastal communities or cloudy communities, right? We often have clouds. The sky is even brighter because those clouds hold and reflect all that light that's coming from below. And so, you have the sleepless person here. And this is just a simple graphic of a study that was done in Israel, a very robust study. And you can just see the more light, the fewer hours of sleep. And the fewer hours of sleep are creating obesity and depression and anxiety and more than 2 times the risk of cancer for women who are exposed to artificial light at night because your system gets knocked off. Prostate cancer. We're finding all kinds of things that are associated with it. And so for our own health, it's better not to have all this light coming in when we're supposed to be telling our bodies it's time to shut down and rest. The biggest myth is this: more light and brighter the light, the safer. And that's why we're seeing brighter lights, not just because the vendors are making them, but now it's amazing how I get these things into my feed and I have to get really, I say I have to get Philly girl on them when I see some of these ads that come through my feed showing like this mega flashlight light, like, this is the Superman of lights, or here's this light. And I'm like, oh, don't show me those lights. I've spent so much energy fighting those lights. It's, if people can, they're going to put in this brighter light with this notion that it's safer. But look at the picture below. So here's this garage lit, and you can see just from the camera. Do you see all the light flaming off of it? That's glare. If light makes you squint, that's glare. If there's glare, it's too much light. It's that simple. So when you say, how dim should it be? How much? How white should it be? What color? If it makes you squint, it is not helpful. It's actually harmful because we have these pupils, right? And the way we see, and we're deer in the headlights. So here's our eyes looking at this glare. And even from a photograph of it, you can see where I have circled. You can't really see what's in that circle because of the glare that's emitted. But now, if you even just do a synthesizing of like, okay, here's the hand, I'm just going to create a shade on that glare. And now you've taken that glare out. Look what's right standing here. So is this light safe or is the shielded light? Because the shielded light's going to go to the ground. The warmer color temperature, the less bright light is going to all be on the ground and it's going to be soft and it's going to let your eyes work in compatibility with that light and not create any adverse response from your eyes. And you will see that there's a person standing there. And that's when it becomes safe. Here's the lights again, unshielded. This light's going everywhere, and you can see the sky above it. The light's going up to the top of the building. We really don't need to illuminate rooftops. We don't need to illuminate all the way out to here. We just need to find access into the garage. And I would say, like, why is this even on if there's a car not driving into the garage? Because if a car comes in with its headlights at enough a distance, you can set a motion detector on it that'll click on. The car goes safely into the garage. The truck goes into the maintenance yard. The fire truck goes into the garage, and then the lights can go off, right? But here it is when they're shielded. Okay, so we haven't said turn out your lights altogether, take away lights, be rid of them, but it's all on the ground now, not up to the sky. It's shielded. It's not creating that glare. It's creating a safer environment where you could see if there was a creepo standing right there, you'd be able to see right away. So it's serious enough in terms of health that the American Medical Association said over 10 years ago to beware of this blue light at night, this artificial blue light at night. And if you don't believe me, this is a great, just jot down this YouTube link here, and it's this 2-minute video. It's this night ranger guy, and it's a college campus, and there's this light. It's shielded. It's not really bright, but they put it between two trees, and so it creates these really deep shadows to the side. And there's this fellow just standing inside that shadow, and believe me, people who commit crime, they're savvy. Not all of them, but they're savvy. They know to hide in the shadow. So they know where you have that super bright spotlight on your garage or that super bright light in front of your business. They know they don't even have to get behind a bush. They can just stand in that really super contrasting shadow that it creates. And they can just be standing right there to hide. So the environment, I got into this 16 years ago because my background's ecology, and I've been an amateur astronomer since I'm 5. And as soon as I discovered that there was this thing called light pollution and that it was harming both the stars and creatures on Earth, I thought, I guess it takes hubris, but I thought, not on my watch. That was my response. Not on my watch. And, being of a certain age, the people who are mostly the advocates are the people who remember a night. Remember how we managed to do so many things without dropping dead, without a gazillion, lumens of light. I say, yeah, seatbelts were a good thing. We drove without seatbelts too. Seatbelts are a good thing, but we get around with a lot less light, and it was all fine. And we saw those people out on Boston Commons getting around. But now we have this light, and we know that it's not just unhealthy for us, not just that it wastes money, but that it is an that does environmental harm. And you can see here the biggest thing that we came to recognize this is because with the advent of LED lights, LEDs, the way that there's this isn't a commercial for or against LEDs because they're here and they're here to stay, and they can be a great technology, but they need to be used well. Most people they've bought a light. So if you operate a business and you have a light and say it's 2,000 lumens, lumens is the amount of light output. So from the source itself, how much light is actually coming out is lumens. And say it's 2,000. And now you're going to replace it with LED. So you're going to say, well, I want at least 2,000. Oh, but look how cheap this is. I'll buy the 4,000 lumen one. Well, a 2000 lumen LED light and a 2000 lumen halogen or mercury vapor or your other light is not the same. It's not the same thing. And it's because LEDs are so well designed, all those little diodes, they're all direction. Each one of those lights can be, they're aimed in different directions. So they are way more targeted. It's just like if you talk about somebody you knew with breast cancer 20 years ago and you talk to somebody today with radiation treatment, it is so pinpointed. It is so focused. It's a different animal. It's not tit for tat. You can't replace it with the same amount because all those diodes can be directed. They can be directed so well that we would never need another post lamp. We don't need lights up on poles. That's turn of the century. That's medieval technology where they stuck a stake of wood, right, up high to illuminate an area. And then they said, oh, well, now we have gaslight. And so they did the same thing because that's what people had done with the torch. And then they took that gaslight and they said, oh, now we're going to put other lights. And now we have this really sophisticated technology and we're still doing that. But this technology is so amazing that we could have a post this high and that light could be specifically directed just to the street and the sidewalk. And that's all that would be illuminated down here. Now it has something that's so high that now you have to make even more light so it reaches its subject, right? And then that light's going everywhere else. You could put a light right there this tall to do the same, to have the same look. That's the technology. And we're just not utilizing the technology. We just keep, you know, putting a horse saddle onto a bicycle. And so, you know, if we start thinking in a kind of modern way and using these lights in a good way, we can protect ecosystems. And here's this blue light. So here's a 4,000 Kelvin. We have 44,000 of these 4,000 Kelvin streetlights in Portland. I lost that battle, spent years after that battle to have less, lost that battle. But look at the spike of blue versus 2,700 versus what you hear from Dark Sky International say no more than 3,000. But 3,000 still has a big spike. Look at how much less it is at 2,700. And by 2,200, it's almost gone. And when you look at the old streetlights, most of the streetlights that are still around, if you see that kind of orangey glow, those are the high pressure sodium. We still have tons of those lights here in the city, right? 2,200. So how sustainable is it to replace something that was warm, just not shielded, and replace it with something that has this big blue spike that we know from? You could stack the studies that have been done, and it would be surpass this rooftop in terms of what we know of how detrimental this blue light is. So, you know, just to go back one, you know, how it screws up. It screws up the foraging, the mating, the hunting, the migration behaviors. We're on the Pacific flyways. 80% of migratory birds migrate at night. So if we're lighting up the night, we're screwing up their migration patterns. They've already got enough to deal with. Now they get avian flu. Like they have to deal with something silly like light pollution, right? It's like talk about putting, you know, salt in the wound. 62% of all species. That's a super majority, right? If we talk about that's a super majority. 62% of species are nocturnal. So we're wrecking. If you think of an owl is designed to be so stuffed that when they do studies on the flight of an owl, they can't detect it with the most specialized sound equipment. They can't hear the sound of the owl's wings flying because it evolved to be stealth. It is this extraordinary night creature so that it could hunt so well. But it knows when the moon's coming. And it knows it better catch everything it needs to catch before then, because now the moon is going to screw up its stealthness, because this light's going to be in the sky. Well, we don't have the moon every night. I mean, it's rare, but it's below our horizon. And we only have a full moon one night a year. But now we have light out there that is brighter than the full moon. Some lights that people are putting up on their businesses and in the houses that are brighter than daylight, than natural daylight. And millions of years of evolution for the cell have gone down the drain because now these owls are doing all that stuff. So this isn't an easy process to become a dark sky community. But in the process of trying to be a dark sky community in itself, there's recognition from the media, there's recognition from others, there's recognition that this is a dark sky destination. So while international recognition can give a bigger boost to being a destination, one can be a dark sky destination without being certified. So everything moving through this process to work towards getting there is still going to make Lincoln City a dark sky destination. So all will not be lost if we don't reach all these criteria. And you'll see the biggest criteria, and the reason why there aren't a gazillion places that are certified is because you have to adopt an ordinance that meets that is complicit with those 5 principles, where I had that postcard with the 5 responsible lighting principles, that or more, not less. So you have to have that in writing, adopted by your council, adopted by your commissioners if you're a county, that you're going to have this ordinance where, any new development's going to have to be fully shielded. Lighting is going to have to be at a certain, within a certain range of color temperatures, is going to use the lowest amount, is going to qualify that. And that's not copacetic for every community. And so that's why we're doing these stakeholder meetings, is to talk to all of you, to see what kind of issues and concerns you have, to address them now. Because if we keep walking this path, there is a step of it being approved, and council's not going to approve something that the community doesn't want. And a lot of the reasons why the community might not want something like this is because they think it's always overreach. Somebody's telling me what to do. And so the only antidote to that is education, 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 right? Because I didn't know about this until 16 years ago, and now I know it exists, I do something about it. People who will say to me, when I do outreach tables at events, and they say, I just didn't know. Because nobody wants to throw light into their neighbor's bedroom so that they can't sleep. Nobody goes out to be evil or menacing, right? It's just a lack of information that's out there. And once I'll tell you, the sad thing is once you know how to look at some of these lights, you'll start seeing all the lights. You'll start seeing, what's that light doing here? What's that light doing here? So it can be annoying too. It's just like when a friend gets a certain car, now all of a sudden you see those cars everywhere. Well, it's the same thing. You'll see every non-dark sky friendly light that's out there. So you have to get that. You have to get your ordinance, and then you also have to show that you're committed to getting there. So if all your lights within this, all the city-owned lights aren't having all these responsible criteria checked, you have a 5-year period, and you have to show how you're going to get there. Which lights, when, and where. You have to lay out that path to get there. You have to have broad support for dark skies from a wide range of community organizations. That means they're going to want letters of support from people within the chambers, people in the big business industries, people in the tourism agencies, people from the environmental community, even state parks, because you have state parks here in the community, to show that there's broad support across the board. And you have to do this education and outreach. So you don't just deal with your lights, get a policy that says you're going to deal with your lights, and you're going to deal with your lights over a range of time. And then, you have to educate people, because you don't want to be spending money on enforcement. Nobody wants to send the police out because a neighbor's light's trespassing. That's not a good use of police time. So people just need to be educated so that they'll do it willingly, because they'll know it's a smart thing to do, that it's a kind thing to do, right? That it's a win-win. And so you have this awareness, and you can have awareness through an information brochure. You can have community dark sky awareness events, where you have not just to do a star party. That doesn't count. You have to have education about why you want to keep things, dark sky friendly when you have your star party. So you have these awareness events, and maybe you can have one or the other. So, Lincoln City's already doing it. Lincoln City's already been part of, for International Dark Sky Week, of which today is the last day, had that event on Thursday. That was a pretty there was good response to. But it could even go in the school curriculum. And so the schools can be part of this. The libraries can be part of this. The libraries can be part of education. So this isn't all just within the cities. This has to be throughout the community, people being involved. And so it's going to take some voluntary work. This success demonstrates success in light pollution control. I would say if I was going to demonstrate a recent development that has dark sky friendly lighting only where this police building right here. When I came in last night to check things out, I'm like, that's a recent development. This is a recent building. It's dark sky friendly. I mean, and you even when you come up to it, if you've ever been here at night, just to see the way the lighting is, it's warm, it's hidden under the rail, it's still lighting up your way up the steps. The lights are 1/5 the brightness of the lights just across the way at the fire and rescue. So the fire and rescue lights could take a good, right? Some good tips from the lights here at the police department. But showing that you're already working at it, that you already have a site that's doing that. And then looking at establishing a baseline. So what is the light in the sky? We just saw the trends of what's happening. So we want to capture that. We want to capture with scientific instruments. It's like, what is the light, the brightness in the sky right now? And what will it be like over time? Because once you're certified, you have to continue that forever because you have to show that you're actually making an impact. It could be going in reverse because maybe Newport's getting brighter and brighter and brighter and brighter, right? And it doesn't matter. If you light a candle in the room and you open the door, it's going to light in there too, right? Light travels all the way from millions of miles, light years away from stars. So the light in Newport, and we saw there is no light in there. There isn't any light in the wetlands and forests that we saw that are getting worse. That's light from outside the wetlands and forest. And so to have this program, and so the city's installing these meters, and here they are. Here, pop them here. Here they are. These little like soup cans. Inside is this little device with a mirror. And if anybody's ever seen a stud finder, that's my best analogy. It's like a little stud finder inside a soup can, and they can go up on a post, and there's a little hole in the top, and that's picking up the light straight above at zenith. And it's every 5 minutes it's collecting it. And then that data is sorted to look at the lights where there's no moon out disrupting it. And that's all collected, and that's how you get to generate these maps and see what's happening. And so these are out there. The city's running them. That's the best way to do it. But volunteers could also be helping, and volunteers could be part of, and schools could be working to do this Globe at Night. This Globe at Night is a simple way for people to go out and do citizen science. It's a great way to gather the community together, to be, to get out their smartphones, to look up, and it's like, oh, it's winter, we're going to do Orion. Oh, now it's summer, we're going to do Cygnus, the swan. And you're going to compare what you see in terms of not the numbers, you don't have to count them. You're just looking at the over pattern and you're matching it to several different pictures of what your sky looks like. And that's how they develop these maps too. And they correlate that mapping with the mapping that's from the satellites to see what this trend is in light pollution. But that's a great way to engage the community, and even advertising that and talking about that just keeps this awareness out there. And then there'll be this little handheld one. So these are fixed. These are stationary. These aren't taken out. These are handheld ones that people can borrow and go out and collect some of this data themselves. So in the program that we're doing, part of this feasibility to say, hey, are we really, seems we're well suited, but what's the community think about it? So we're doing these stakeholders meetings. We're doing this community engagement. We're putting together a social media campaign. We're having stakeholder meetings. There'll be a public open house where everybody comes. The Astronomy Club has talked about putting together this night sky lighting recognition program. So people are engaged already, and we'll keep that going. So here are a few dates, and off to the right, you can see this is International Dark Sky Week. This is a library, sent this photo on to show that they just put a little display together for International Dark Sky Week to just create awareness. And so you see these astronomy books. You don't see a whole lot here on dark skies per se, but In fact, I don't know who put this together, but they must be my age because I have the same exact map that was in National Geographic in the 70s. I don't think they make this map anymore. It's pretty tattered, but I still have this map. So the first date to take note of is the 15th of May, and that's going to be Zoom. We have to set the time, and I'll put together a little blurb that'll give to Stephanie, and Stephanie will get that word out far and wide. But that's a training, so that people can participate in a 2-day, May 20th and 21st, voluntary, let's go out and try to see what we have in the community right now. What are our lights like? What are the status? Do we have a shielding issue? Are there a lot of warm lights, but they're not shielded? Or are there a lot of shielded lights, but they're overly bright? Or they're just none of the above? And, like, we're not going to count light by light or take pictures of every light. We're just going to get an idea, like a drive-by, some note taking, just to get an idea. I mean, just driving around last night and going to different spots, I can say there aren't any gas stations right now that are dark sky that are following all of it. They can have those lights recessed and they can be less bright. There are some very unnecessary lights, and I'll point the finger right at the city itself, right? The cultural center. When people were doing these things, nobody went out to do something to be mischievous, right? Or menacing. When the cultural center and those stick lights went up, that was architectural, that was pretty, because nobody knew that that light was harmful, right? So we just didn't know. But now we know. And so we can say those stick lights, they might be architecturally pleasing, they might look cool, but those aren't the kind of lights that are going to pass muster to be a dark sky community, right? So we always have to start at home. Right? We always have to start at home. And anyway, at the end of the day, it might be that the city itself says, this is a big lift. We've got so many lights that are, this is going to be a several year effort to raise these funds or seek grants to do this. And the same thing, the businesses might be like, well, this is a lot, but we just want to get a handle on it. So on the 20th and 21st, we're going to go out in teams, and we're going to, teams of two, where one person is driving and one person is taking notes on their device, or they're taking notes on a map to just, and that this training is to tell you how we're going to do that and what to look for and what lights are compatible lights with stewarding the night and which lights aren't. And even if you don't think you can volunteer on the 20th and the 21st, but you want to know what you can do with your own home or business, you can show up to that training on the 15th over Zoom so that you can, everything starts right at home. Then the city itself is already doing an audit of all their lights. And so, this is it. I just heard from Cape Junction the other day where the city said, oh, we don't know what lights we have. And I'm like, well, somebody's paying an electric bill. So somebody's paying an electric bill. So if the city doesn't own them, and the public utility they're paying an electric bill. So somebody knows what lights are there for the city, right? It is quite possible, and it's the case here, where the city knows the lights, they get the electric bill, but they don't know exactly where each one is. And so the city is making the effort to get each of those lights onto a map so they know where they are. So we can determine which lights have no purpose and need to just be decommissioned, which lights are time for a retrofit, which should we retrofit first? Maybe we should retrofit the lights that are closer to sensitive habitat first, or maybe we should retrofit first the lights that are the most egregious, right? And it's coming up with those criteria and putting that together. And so the city's working on that right now. And then in the lighting audit 2021, and then in mid-June, we haven't knocked on a date yet. Hopefully we get that quite soon. But a public open house. And that will be for everybody to show up. I mean, you've all been invited here as key stakeholders, as focus groups, but this will be for everybody. And we'll have tables where people can talk to different folks. We'll have posters, we'll make it, and anybody too, if you're from the business community and you want to volunteer to be at a table and to represent the business community, especially if it's an idea that you support, as many people, who can be someone for folks to talk to who, like me, 16 years ago, really know nothing about this, don't understand it, or have a lot of misunderstandings of what it is and isn't. Because it's not about turning off all the lights. It's not about dark ground. It's about dark sky. As an ecologist, I would say it'd be great if it could be dark ground too, because the insects, and the other creatures that are walking the ground, your light might be shielded going up to space, but they're getting dinged with it nonstop. But we're never gonna have a panacea for everything. We just have to do the best we can, you know, the best we can. So community engagement, we're starting it here. We started with all the city representatives a week or two ago, and we've just had earlier a meeting mostly focused on the non-government organizations. And then, to keep it going. And that means looking at partnerships, looking at the Bird Alliance, looking at Cascade Head, looking at the local astronomy club, the people who are interested in participating and helping us keep that awareness and that engagement going. And then in May and July, when all the information is collected of, well, where do we have some problems within the city? What is the feedback we're hearing from these stakeholders in public meetings, to put together that plan of where do we start in terms of a plan? Because the next step would be, whether it's a certification or not, it's going to mean that there are a lot of old lights that the city has, and you can't replace those bulbs anymore. And they're going to have to be retrofitted. What lights are going to be the best to use? And I would say, don't make them brighter than they've been. Don't make them whiter than they've been. That's not sustainable. That's a gentleman's agreement. On record as an official IDA delegate. But I've argued this with all the leadership at IDA itself, too, the International Dark Sky Association, now Dark Sky. It's not sustainable. The science is out. We know that going up to 3,000 is too much, and you can see by that chart. If we keep it to 2,200, low pressure sodium lights for 2,200, zero blue light. High pressure sodium, teensy bit of blue light, 2,200 Kelvin. Why are we keeping it climbing when they actually make LED lights that are lower, that are warmer, with all the color rendering, where you can see colors as under this amber light, as well as you can see colors, that your eyes are you seeing all the colors of a person's shirt, etc., as the old lights. So there's a little difference now. So this little thing here is, I'm really bad when I'm doing outreach events of getting pictures. I'm a kind of a nature picture person, architecture and nature, but I'm horrible at getting pictures of people. So I had to steal this picture from a colleague at another organization in the desert. But these are the kinds of booths that could be at the farmers market. I've hosted a booth like this at farmers market. I've hosted them in town. I've gone to schools, different places like that, where you just start getting this outreach out there. And I'll tell you too, if you ecology is a hard subject. Everybody's overwhelmed with it because we know that, we're in the 7th mass extinction stage, and it can be darn depressing for people. And so I've taught a lot of after school classes and in ecology and astronomy, but I tell you, I often prefer to teach the astronomy, and I use the way that stars are born and die and how everything's cyclic to teach ecology, and to teach how far away everything is and how inhospitable it is, to say, let's take care of Earth, because it's kind of overwhelming sometimes if we talk about what's going on with Earth. But when you engage people through astronomy, let people be inspired and talk about the cycles and give people a different perspective, it's a real good dose of medicine. It's a real healing thing. So with that, if you have questions and you've put them in the chat, I don't know if all right, nothing in the chat. Yeah.
I recall being in the Midwest a few years ago, being at, through the summertime, saying